Yeah. Good evening. Welcome to the October 25th Village Board Work Session. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who is our clerk this evening?
I'm wearing that hat as well. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Didn't know that was a requirement.
It's
Yeah, I
not,
didn't
but
either.
it's good for tonight. Thank
New
you, sir.
information.
Class I took during the third year of law school.
Oh,
Just let's start with the roll call. Trustee Bazemore.
Present.
Trustee Quezada.
Present.
Trustee Levin.
Present.
Trustee Codman.
Present.
And Mayor Garrity.
present.
Do we have any mayor and trustees announcements?
We do. A little public service announcement reminding everybody that in just 2 weeks from yesterday, November 7th, is Election Day. If you're a registered voter, please remember to go out and vote on Election Day. And this week is the deadline for absentee ballots. So anyone who's away at college, if somebody in your family is away in the military, if you are infirmed, for any reason are not going to be in your polling location on Election Day, you still have time to apply for an absentee ballot. Please visit the Westchester Board of Elections website and fill out that ballot, as long as you mail it in 7 days before the election, which I think technically is next week, but I would get in by the end of this week. Then they'll send you a ballot in the mail. Just have to get that turned around in time to be able to have your vote counted wherever you are in the world. And one other thing I'd like to mention is the Repair Cafe is happening, it's November 4th, right?
I just saw the notice.
I know, I saw the notice all over the place, but I didn't notice open it on my phone, and I'm almost positive it's November 4th. Let me see if I can find all the Susie Ross notifications, who's the chair of the Green Ossining. There must be a flyer here. Oh, gosh. It's at the community center from like 11 to 3. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's November 4th. We're going to move on. If I'm wrong, then we will correct it later in the meeting. Anybody else have announcements? No. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. This evening we have one village board resolution. So is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to the board with regard to the resolution that is before the board this evening?
Excuse me.
Want some water?
It's water?
No, it's the season.
Okay.
I've looked at this resolution earlier today and just again now. And I have one concern. It still specifies a specific property, and yet, as I understand the text amendment, it would apply to a variety of places through the village, although I don't know that any have yet been identified. And I think the board needs to be cognizant of that and to see that the environmental analysis takes into account those other places as well. And that's my only comment. Thank you.
Corporation Counsel, is that something that you can speak to?
Yes, I can advise Mr. Smith and the board that the proposed text amendment would involve all of the CDD districts, not simply the one district where the particular parcel is located. This is similar to other amendments that have been presented to the board. It obviously includes all districts, not simply the one district where a proposed project is. And any environmental impact statement will go into the effects in all of those potential districts, not just the one district.
Okay.
May I be heard on the resolution?
Let's come to the...
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the board. My name is Joe Ariel. I am the attorney for the applicant in this project. Thank you for holding this single item legislative session tonight. I concur, by the way, with that position and with the concern raised by the neighbor. Clearly, we will be studying all the parcels to which it would apply. I would also like to ask that the board consider, as you know, there's never been a controversy about the idea that this would ultimately be a positive declaration. We submitted it that way when we first came before the board. The neighbors have submitted their own environmental issues, which tend toward that result, and we have not disputed that. And there's a pretty substantial environmental record already, an EAF and other studies submitted. So I would really ask the board to consider declaring a positive declaration tonight. And if not, at least since you have another, I believe, legislative session next week, I think, putting it on the agenda for that night in order to do that. There's certainly that's the highest level of environmental scrutiny that there can be for a project, so there's certainly no harm in doing that. We think it's the right thing to do. And also the issue of scheduling a public scoping session, which is not required by SECR, but where there's a positive declaration, it's certainly a good idea, and it creates full disclosure for the public and an opportunity for the board and other boards of the village to weigh in. And again, whatever amount of time the board feels it needs in order to be ready for that scoping session and further develop the draft scope, you can accommodate that in scheduling it, but I really would ask that you schedule it. There's no disadvantage to doing so, to putting it on the calendar, and we'll commit to meeting with your consultants to further develop the scope. So, and once again, I would ask that if you do not do that tonight, I would sincerely request that you put it on your agenda for that action at your next legislative session.
So noted, thank you. If Corporation Counsel wouldn't mind just sort of clarifying for folks the process, this first step that we are looking to consider tonight is declaring the Board of Trustees lead agency in the SECR process. The other steps that were referred to of the scoping sessions and the public hearings along that, could you just update for the board and for the public exactly what's being referred to and your recommendations?
Of course, ma'am. Tonight, the resolution would be for a declaration of lead agency status with regard to the project and the zoning text amendment that's been presented. The next step would be a declaration of significance. Mr. Ariel, the attorney for the Snowden Woods project, has indicated that his client understands that this would be a positive declaration with regard to this particular project. And while we appreciate what Mr. Ariel has said, there are documents that the village needs to have and prepare and to file with the Department of Environmental Protection once the declaration of significance is made, be it either a positive or a negative declaration. Under the New York Code Rules and Regulations, the village has 20 days from acceptance of lead agency status in order to make the declaration of significance. That 20-day period, as other time periods, can be extended upon written agreement by the village, the lead agency, and the applicant, with a written notification to all other interested and involved agencies and parties. With regard to the scoping session, we are reviewing documents that have been recently provided by the Snowden Woods folks. We wish to meet and intend to meet with them, and that would be myself, the village manager, and the planner, to go over those documents. With regard to the scheduling of the scoping session, again, according to New York rules, the final scoping document is ordinarily due 60 days after the draft scoping document is received. So we want to have everything in order. Again, those dates can be extended. So it's just a matter of having the procedure completely correct and make sure that we're going in the right direction with regard to that. The first step is lead agency. Then would come the declaration of significance, and in this case, the scheduling of a scoping session, which would allow all interested parties, neighbors, anyone who wants to comment both in writing and at a public meeting as to the scope of this project and the document, which will ultimately form the environmental impact statement that is to be provided.
Thank you. I stepped away for a minute just to grab our zoning map for my own understanding, because it was referenced that the CCD districts, that there's more than one. I'm seeing two.
Right.
One north of the Beach Road neighborhood and this one, which is south of the Beach Road neighborhood. There's no others in other parts that I'm just overlooking that you're aware of?
The village, as far as I know, there are just two CDD
Okay.
districts in the
Right.
village.
And that, in my very intense 5-minute look at that. I didn't find any others either. And this, that CDD stands for Conservation Development District, and so it's, tends to be areas that don't have a lot of things pre-built and a lot of lots on them. Okay. Anybody else have questions or comments? All right. Clerk?
Any other comments from the audience? With that, whereas Ossining River Associates, Inc. submitted a petition to the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees for zoning text amendments involving the petitioner's property, consisting, according to the petition, of approximately 14.122 unimproved acres, primarily in the CDD zoning district, with 3.12% of petitioner's property in the adjacent S125 zoning district. And whereas the petitioner's property is bounded by Snowden Avenue to the south, Old Croton Aqueduct to the east, Beach Road and Sandy Drive to the north, and public and private property to the west. And whereas, according to the petition, the petitioner proposes to develop the property by constructing 198 residential units with amenities for its residents, 4 5-story buildings, 2 with 66 units each and 2 with 33 units each, as well as construct a new firehouse, more or less on the site of the existing firehouse on Snowden Avenue. And whereas with the petitioner provided a survey, concept plan, proposed text amendments, environmental assessment form, fiscal analysis, and traffic study. And whereas the petitioner recognizes the need for a coordinated environmental review under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And whereas the Board of Trustees identified a list of involved and interested agencies and wishes to conduct the coordinated environmental review under SECRA. And whereas by resolution dated July 19, 2017, the Board of Trustees determined that it is the appropriate agency to serve as lead agency for the coordinated environmental review of the proposed action, including the proposed zoning text amendments. And whereas on July 31, 2017, the declaration of intent to serve as lead agency with lead agency agreement was mailed with supporting documents to other involved agencies and interested parties. And whereas following mailing of the declaration of intent to serve as lead agency with lead agency agreement, no other involved agency objected to the Village Board of Trustees acting as lead agency. And whereas on September 14, 2017, the Westchester County Planning Board wrote to the village clerk that there was no objection to the Village Board of Trustees acting as lead agency, and that the Planning Board requested additional documents as those documents become available. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees hereby declares itself as lead agency for the environmental review of the Snowden Woods project, including the proposed zoning text amendments. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Clerk Kahan?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right.
I would now accept a motion to adjourn to work session.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and with that, we have swiftly transitioned into our work session. As anybody looking around the table can see, Manager McDonald is out of town this week. She's at a manager's conference, far, far away in a distant land, and so, of I think, Texas. And so we're very pleased that Corporation Counsel Kahan has agreed to step into the seat and keep us on track tonight. So I'll hand it over to you again, Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Our first topic tonight is the Operations Center Rehabilitation Project. We have our village engineer, Paul Fraioli, and Andy Teese for the discussion.
We have
Thank you, Corporation Counsel.
you're going to put
You
on a
did-
show for us?
Yes, we have a
Okay.
PowerPoint presentation. I also have some handouts, and I'm going to explain why they weren't in your packets for earlier review, because it just mirrors the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to hand those out now, and then Andy and I are going to start and eventually turn it over to our visitor this evening. Thank you, John. Okay. Again, thank you, Mayor, Board, for having us this evening. Andy and I are excited to be back and finally present what has been a long talked about project in capital budgets for, I'm going to guesstimate, almost a decade now, where when we first conceived this project, it was more or less discussed installing an elevator in our John Paul Rodriguez Operations Center on Route 9A South on the outskirts of the village, where we house our planning board, our planning department, our building department, and our Department of Public Works. And then over the years, as we talked about what works best, and then how the building is operated now and how it may operate in the future, we talked about how an elevator project could be expanded to incorporate more details, more along the lines if we're really going to touch the building, we want to touch it right and touch it once and do everything that has been thought about on our improvement list for this building, which I think the village has owned now for going on 30 years, maybe more. It was an old armory, as most of you know, and it serves as a very practical space for the operation that operates out of that building now. So, that said, with us this evening, we have Miss Veronica Burns. She's a registered architect, and she's also a senior architect and director of the regional office of H2M Architects and Engineers out of Purchase, New York. Veronica and her team have met with Andy and I numerous times in scoping this presentation this evening and the subsequent proposal, which is going to be architectural and design services that Andrew and I would like to see included in the 2018 capital budget. It exists there now. I'm going to let Veronica talk about those details and the detail of the proposal, but when she's done with her remarks, we'll come back again and we'll talk a little bit more about the timeline and the logistics of the same. So again, without further ado, Veronica, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present this tonight. And I think I'm just going to hit the mouse to fast forward. Yes, so H2M is a full-service architectural and engineering firm. We've been in business since 1933. We have 8 offices overall, our closest being the office in Purchase, which is about 30 minutes away or 15 miles. We also have an office in Suffern, in Albany. Our headquarters is on Long Island. We have an office in New York City and then 2 offices in New Jersey. We're about 380 architects and engineers overall, and this is just a list of the types of services that we do provide. I wanted to we have many more clients than this, but I wanted to note just some of the local clients that we've worked with over the last few years. H2M is known for doing a lot of municipal work, municipalities, fire districts, school districts, water districts, sewer districts, things of that nature. So just wanted to note some of the ones that are more similar in this type of scope that's in this project, potentially in this project as well. And also just want to note some of our key projects that we've done over the last few years, also, somewhat within this area. Although they're, as Paul mentioned, we're potentially touching different parts of this building, and every project is very different, but we want to just give you a little bit of an example of the type of work that we've done. And one of the things that we really built our reputation on is that we're known for doing very small projects to very large projects. And nothing is too small or too big for us to handle. So if it's a roof replacement or, there's an issue with a plumbing fixture or whatever it happens to be, we're going to try and help you out with that. So just an example of some of the projects that we've done throughout the years. So our team. So as I mentioned, we have 8 offices overall, and typically, but we don't have every discipline in every office. So for instance, right now in our purchase office, we have architects, and most of our engineers reside between our Suffern, New York City, and Melville, Long Island office. So what we do is we pull together the right team for the project. So Joe Matola is my boss. He's a senior vice president and he's a director, and he resides down in Melville. I'm a partner in the company and a senior architect, and I manage our office. And Mike Messenger, he's a senior architect. He would actually be the architect that would be managing the project along with me. And then we have staff architects and then all the in-house engineering disciplines as well. And what we always make sure is that we pull together a team that will be with you from the beginning of the project to the end of the project. It's not our nature to continue to introduce you to different people as the project goes into different phases. You'll see the same faces over and over again throughout the entire, throughout every phase of the project. We find that consistency works. It makes everyone feel more comfortable with the project. So our approach. The proposal that we've provided provides a detailed list of all the phases and everything that we would provide in the project, but I just wanted to give you these 6 bullet items and explain a little bit about them. So typically what we do is that we meet with the project team and the stakeholders. So whoever the stakeholders are that you determine the stakeholders are, we meet with them to get a better understanding of what the scope of work is. And we've already met with Paul and Andy and have a good understanding of the project, but we'll definitely delve into it a lot deeper than we have already. And we'll investigate the building. We'll bring our team of engineers into the building and do a thorough inspection of all the services. We'll document that in a written report, as well as provide preliminary drawings, and that's the schematic design phase. So at that point, you'll have an understanding of what the project is going to look like in terms of preliminary drawings, and then you'll also have a cost estimate. And it's important that we do that cost estimate at the 30% phase, so you really get a sense of what the project is going to cost. We build contingencies in it, and that'll be a complete cost estimate that includes hard costs, which are the construction costs, and then the soft costs, which are engineering fees, architecture fees, legal fees, printing, abatement, environmental testing, and things of that nature. Once we get approval on the 30% phase, then we move into the construction document phase. And then at that point, the construction document phase, we prepare the actual construction documents, or the documents that you'll use to put this project out to public bid. We typically meet several times through that phase as well, and I just have noted 50 and 90% design phases. And then at the 90% design phase, again, we'll provide another cost estimate. It'll be much more detailed than the original estimate that we prepared, because then we'll have a better sense of what the scope of work is. And I also should mention that back at that 30% cost estimate, you'll have a good understanding of what the budget will be, and then if it's over budget or under budget, if you want to add more work items in, or if you need to take some work items out, or build alternates into the project so you can make some additional selections during the bidding phase if the project is bid in a favorable bidding climate. And the fourth bullet item down, we get to soliciting bids. So bids are, we'll prepare the construction documents and we put the project out to bid, and we'll work with the village to do that. And once the bids are received by the district, and we would recommend 4 prime contracts depending on the overall dollar value that is estimated. If it's under 1.5 million, then you're able to bid it out as a single prime contract, but if it's over 1.5 million, then it's going to be a multi-prime project. We'll interview the contractors, we'll provide recommendations to the village as well in terms of an award of the contracts. Then during the construction document phase, we will participate in pre-construction conference where all the contractors come together. We introduce all the parties and explain to them essentially what the rules of the project will be. And then we'll have regularly scheduled construction meetings, review submittals, process contractor payment applications, respond to RFIs or requests for information, check the contractor's work, which is a punch list, and then final inspections and sign off on the project. And then we can also provide periodic construction inspection if you should so desire. So just the general work items, we wanted to give an overview of what we were discussing with Paul and Andy in regards to the scope of the project. So as Paul mentioned, the first item is the new 3-stop elevator from the basement to the 2nd floor. And the intent for the elevator would be that it would be keyed out to the basement, so the public would not have access into the basement. They would only have access to the 1st and 2nd floor. And when we get into the next drawing, which is a very schematic floor plan, we can note where we think that the elevator could go. We want to make the building as energy efficient as possible. We want to reduce your carbon footprint, work with you to reduce your carbon footprint, and reduce your energy usage. So we would propose LED lighting throughout the entire building. We'd be modifying the fire alarm system as it's required in order to accommodate whenever new spaces are developed, or as spaces are changed maybe from storage to office or office to storage. We're going to make the building handicap accessible, so we provide new doors, new hardware in order to make the building handicap accessible. New energy efficient HVAC units for the 2nd floor spaces that are being converted from storage to office space, as well as some of the other spaces on the 2nd floor. We're going to look to take the existing boiler, the fuel oil boiler, and convert it to gas, and that's for the building at the back as well as the building at the front. And we believe that there's a gas line that comes along on the back of the street behind the back of the site, and hopefully we'll be able to run that into the building and convert the building over to gas. And then we'll also be providing provisions for a future security access system. So this is actually these are the original drawings to the building, so they actually still, although you can't really see it at this scale, it still actually notes what the original functions of the spaces were. And what we would propose is the elevator right here at the entrance, and then there is a storage room down on the lower level as well, and we would convert that into a new file storage room with a raised floor, LED lighting, and a dehumidification system so the files are protected. And then actually throughout the entire building to be LED lighting as well. This is a first floor plan, and we're just highlighting again the areas where the work would be taking place. So again, this is the main entrance to the building right here. We would look to make these doors handicap accessible. The doors are very heavy. It may need we may be able to do some sort of a handicap accessible actuator, like the button that's on the wall to open it up. Hopefully that's the way we can do it, but we need to investigate that further. Then the blue area notes the location for an ADA accessible elevator. We'd be renovating the office space on the first floor to provide additional storage to maximize the usage of your space, LED lighting, and update the finishes. We'd also be updating the finishes in the corridors and the stairs and removing the asbestos-containing tile. Renovate the bathrooms on the first floor to provide handicap accessible fixtures as well as energy efficient fixtures. Renovating the break room on the first floor as well, and then adding a storage mezzanine to the maintenance bay, the garage space, and that would be about 20 feet wide in the entire length of that space, which is about 70 feet long.
I didn't know there was a break room on the first floor. Okay.
Is there? I don't think it's a. Is it a break room now? Yeah.
Tenant's office?
Okay.
You get invited there.
This is a second floor plan, and so again, the purple area is denoting the space that would be renovated, the office space that would be renovated, as well as the space over here. Now, currently, this is a large storage room, and that would be converted into additional office space and storage and conference room space. We'd be renovating the bathrooms on the first and second floor. Right now, they're very large bathrooms with large gang showers, and we'd recommend pulling those showers out and provide maybe a single-use shower, and then again, handicap accessible fixtures and reduced water usage fixtures as well. And then again, this is just that mezzanine on the upper level. So this is a roof plan, and the back of the building has a fairly new roof on it that's in good condition, but the rest of the building needs a new roof, so we would recommend replacing the roof there. And we would design that roof system in order to meet the current building and energy codes, and also it would be designed to accommodate the solar panel installation that you're proposing for the future. So we want to talk a little bit about solar wall and solar panels. So it's my understanding that you're interested in having solar panels installed on the building, again, to reduce your carbon footprint and reduce energy efficiency. One of the things that we've been successful with in the past, and we've been recently talking with Paul and Andy about, is also a solar wall. We've installed this in some buildings as well, and essentially what it does is it heats the air. It's essentially a black box that heats the air up, and then it pumps that hot air into the building, so it's actually you're bringing warmer air into the building, and that's perfect for spaces like that big maintenance garage. And you already have the ductwork there, so it may be a applicable use for that. And then what they can do is they can actually put the solar panels right on top of that as well, so you're still not losing any roof area by having that solar wall. And this just explains how the system works, how it brings the air up, brings the air in, heats it up, pumps it into the building. And then the solar panels will also produce energy as well. So the fee. This is the summary of our proposal for the fee services. So design development is $108,500. Construction document fees is $110,600. Bidding and solicitation, $18,400, and the construction phase services is estimated at about $40,500. And then if you should so desire to have periodic construction observation, which we'd estimate about 20 hours a week, that's an additional $77,000, and we're estimating it's about a 6-month construction duration. And if there's any additional items that you'd like to add, we can include those in as well. And then also because of the photovoltaic panels, we want to make sure that the existing building can take the load of those panels. So we've added in an additional structural analysis of $6,000. So the total there is $370,000 for the H2M services. And then just wanted to note that there would be some additional reimbursable expenses, as I noted before, which we would estimate at $23,000, which is potentially soil testing if there's some additional site work that's needed, environmental testing for asbestos abatement, printing and reproduction, legal fees, and things of that nature. So we wanted to give you a complete picture of what the budget would be. So what sets us apart? So H2M is a full-service firm. We've been around since 1933, as I noted. We work with our in-house engineering staff all the time. So it's one-stop shopping where you can really get everything in one spot as opposed to having to sub out to different areas. We have a lot of experience in this market. We have a lot of LEED accredited professionals. We're used to doing sustainable design. And because we're so close, we are able to get here quickly and respond quickly if there should be any issues. And that's it. That's the whole presentation. So.
Thank you, Veronica, for that. So before we do open it up for questions, I want to ask Veronica to stay up here with Andy and I, because I'm not sure which questions you're going to ask, so we're ready. But I wanted to summarize a little bit about the proposal. The reason that Veronica was so verbose about her firm, because we haven't used their firm before, and we really wanted you to, as we've done in the past, we like to bring firms that are specialized in the area of this renovation. So we didn't bring in an engineering firm that's going to go out and hire an architect. They're one-stop shopping, and they're obviously very established, and we do know people within their rank and file, and I'm confident that we are recommending the appropriate firm for this work. That said, the details of the construction cost was also a request of Andy and myself, so you can see it. We didn't just have someone come in and give us a percentage of potential construction. We wanted to see a breakdown on the things that we went over with them and all the things we wanted to see. And we did not nearly go into the detail that is in our mind that is going to be incorporated into this project. But just to give you like a little smattering, when I say it's not just the elevator, we're talking about renovation in central garage to make more floor space, to make it a little more appropriate workspace for them in the ambient air. In the central garage, bring some of the outside storage in to create more parking at the facility, because that facility is it's a great resource, and there's still some untapped areas and usages in there that we can get to, and we want to do these measures to be ahead of the game with respect to that. But at the end of the day, it's going to provide a true public space that has bathrooms for men and women on the first floor and the second floor, because that's both accessible to the public, and be ADA accessible on the first floor and the second floor, because that's all accessible to the public, and that's what we want at the end of the day, so we can be customer friendly too when folks do come to see us. So all that said and done, as we've added some components to this that weren't originally in the scope when we were talking about a $1 to $2 million project. So we're probably talking in 2019 about a borrow that would hit us in 2020 of about a $3 to $4 million project, and that falls right in line with the percentage of the engineer's estimate, which is basically the market rate. 15 to 20% gets you your consultant to do this type of work. And the scope that was presented tonight. So that said, it's a 2018 borrow, which we'll talk about when we sit down in our capital plan for consulting services, and a 2019 borrow for construction. So that concludes our presentation, and then Veronica and myself and Andrew are up here for any questions.
I just wanted to add something. Good evening. So besides the new roof, which is really needed bad, and obviously if you're going to switch to solar, you're going to have to redo the roof. So these are like priority issues. The elevator. We're switching, in the scope is to switch all the oil out of both facilities to natural gas, which is obviously more efficient. We already have new boilers to handle that. It's just a matter of changing the gun assemblies and the piping. That's all in this scope. In the back building, where the highway trucks are, and the front building, this building. That's the scope for that, and I can't think of anything else that was like really big, but that needs to be brought out. Oh, and also the amount of air changes in the garage that Paul had mentioned, that's not ventilated adequately. This solar wall will make a huge difference. If it's 30 degrees, they used it over at the Millwood treatment plant in Newcastle at their water treatment plant. It might heat the outside air up to 60 degrees, and then you heated another 10 degrees of natural gas. So I never knew that you can get a solar wall built in with the actual solar panels. I think that's a great option. It really looks good.
So, so he started it, so I'll just jump on that too and say that we have pretty good records of bills and fuel, heating energy usage, and what we pay for that facility up there. It's segregated from other buildings, so we'll be able to do a somewhat of an ROI on this when we're all said and done, even before we start, really. So that's another component of the project that really is collateral to the elevator, if you will.
Also, what I wanted, I was starting to lose my train of thought. Switching the oil over, last year we had a $100,000 issue with bad oil being delivered, state oil that was delivered. Did a lot of damage to the gun assemblies. It was all reimbursed. It was the lowest bidder that brought dirty oil and screwed up all of our buildings, front and back. And then we had heating issues for like weeks. So that's a big advantage to switching over to natural gas. Also getting rid of the underground storage tanks. So we do monitor them, but it's the right direction.
Questions still?
Yeah.
Are you done?
Done. I don't know, Andy, are you done?
Do we want to be able to reference the presentation in our conversation?
You want to go shoot to the
Yeah,
floor
that's
plans?
fine.
Sure,
Yeah.
Ground floor?
sure.
Yeah, I have this, I don't need that.
That's the basement? Why don't we do it by floor by floor? This,
No, I
All
mean,
right, you can just.
is that what you
go for
wanna
it.
do? I don't know.
No, no, that's fine, don't worry about it. I just wanted to, go back to the first floor.
first floor?
I don't even know where to start, I guess. I don't know if the rest of my colleagues have questions, but the first, and I'm going to go back a little bit in history, the first official time that I met Paul was almost 10 years ago, and we talked about this project then. So when I became a village trustee, about 6 years now, this plan was on capital projects, and it's still in the books then. So I think the rest of my colleagues and some of the staff that has supported on this particular project to go forward, because I think it's something essential for us to have a municipal building that is actually accessible for everybody, and that whole thing works. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this slide up is because the location of the elevator, and I'm not sure how many of you guys have noticed that, is actually where Andy's office is right now. So.
Andy, subtle, isn't it?
It's the optimum location.
Well, he's getting that
Right.
big purple room over there.
Yeah, this is Andy's office here, right here. Where I'm, this is where the hot tub's going, right here.
So, besides that, besides the roof component, I think everything else I remember from previous scope ideas was essential for us to have. This is something that I'm definitely supporting 100%. I think something that we need to do is one of the particular buildings that gives a lot of function either with the public when we have public meetings, either for planning board, architecture review board, zoning board, HPC. So this building gets used a lot, and it needs to be handicap accessible. I have brought up to a couple years back in regards to the doors. I have looked into that myself, and yes, definitely those are beautiful doors, so we need to keep those doors somehow and make them work to be ADA accessible. I guess my only question that I had, and I love the idea of having solar panels, but because of where we're going and how we conserve energy and what we like to see is, I mean, me personally, I don't know, Paul and I talked about this, is creating a green roof area. What does that mean for us, and how does that work with the solar panels? How does that entail at the end of the day, if the rest of the board obviously agrees to do something like that, either now or in a couple years from now, how does that integrate with the concept of this design itself?
Well, I'll answer you like this. The green roof has a component of helping preserve some of the surrounding environment in the building, as we presented in the water treatment plant presentation, where we're going to have a green roof over there versus a solar roof, potentially. It's still very much in the design phase, as you know, because that'll still have a nice environmental component. It will help with some of the, HVAC conditioning of the building, but ultimately it really helps you with your stormwater detention and retention. That's the nice component there. This roof, because you already have a paved surface surrounding the building, when we did the renovation and the addition of the new garage in the back, we actually, it was in the first, it was designed in the year preceding phase 2 regulations for municipalities of 100,000 people or less, which we fall under. So that's about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago now, that the phase 2 regulations started to hit communities like ours. So we designed to those standards. So we have all the retention and detention that we need on the site, including polishing ponds, etc., for all the exterior stormwater and roof shed for our building. So it's this, and because of the sun and the exposure that this building has, it really is a natural fit. To that extent, we were actually approached by a vendor, so to lease the space for solar panel installation. That's only one potential that we're going to investigate during the design process, because the lease discussion that I had with this vendor was based on at the time, it was about 6 months ago, so at the time it was based on what the federal incentives were for leasing and all the give backs that you can get for doing things like that. They may or may not be in place by the time this roof shed becomes available for a vendor to come in. So we don't want to overly commit to what we're going to do to the roof, but that's the mindset today. If we go, the other reason that Veronica went into so much detail with the breakdown and what we're going to do with a certain percentage, we asked for that because this is going to be a little different than most of the projects where we come to you, we walk away, and we come when we're at 85, like we did with the bridge last week. We're at 95% of that bridge. You had some input here and there, but you're going to have a little more here, because this is going to involve operations. It's going to involve, how we do business up there. People are going to move around, so and it's going to have components that we know you want to see and what we want to implement. So we're going to be back in front of you when we get to the 30 or 40%, and then we'll be back in front of you again at the 70 or 80%. So I don't want to predict it, but we could end up coming back and saying, you know what, solar really, there's no financial give back like there used to be, so we're going to consider maybe a green roof or something like that. So we don't want to commit.
What is the time schedule for the 30%?
The 30%, I think, will probably, and you can kick me if I misspeak. Okay. We're probably going to be back, if we have an executed contract document within a month, we'll probably be back at 30%, probably in the end of the first quarter of next year.
I'll be on the chair.
Yeah. Sorry?
Nothing.
I know what you said.
One of the things to look at in terms of a planted green roof is the structural load on it. So because this is an existing building, it would just potentially include additional structural analysis in order to make sure that the additional weight can be held or bared down by.
But that was part of the scope of the estimate that you already had in there, so
for
that
the
kind of
structural
falls
part. Yep,
into
so
that.
just
If the board would like to move forward, if anything.
Absolutely. So that, then depending on what I'm sorry, I should have been clear. The cost of the structural enhancements would be. We're going to do the analysis, but what the enhancements would potentially need to be in order to continue to assume that additional load.
So for me, it's not so much questions. I wasn't here 10 years ago and just seen it on paper. And I've only gone into a building a few times. The human aspect of this and the ROI is really missing in this conversation. And can't really assume that people stay on top of all of these things. So I would just suggest, so, you know, you said that you want to be customer friendly, but when you started a few years ago and where it'll be in 10 years, customers change. So there's a lot of storage. So I'd like to know why we need so much storage at a time when everything should be stored on the cloud. You might say, actually, this becomes the place where we store all of the village's stuff. So I don't really need an answer about it, but I think there's a real human story that's missing out of this. Like, is this facility open late into the night so community groups can use it for other functions? Therefore, you need bathrooms, because if they're not, you need fewer bathrooms than more. I mean, there's like a whole thing that I don't get, and I think a lot of people won't when they see this. You know, so there's a couple of elevators on that, a couple of bathrooms. I don't know why you need why you need two bathrooms instead of just one. So, because I don't know how many people use the floor, and I don't know if you're planning for growth to have more people in office space and are moving to cubicles versus fewer people over the next few years. Like, I don't understand, except for the elevator and the ADA, and the roof. You know, if you got a leak in the roof, you're not going to fix the leak. You got to fix the roof, usually. I mean, you know, understood. So I get, like, the pieces, the story of why we're even just not putting an elevator in the roof, why we're doing all this other stuff, I think is something you want to add by the next presentation, because it really is very much an engineering. And, you know, next to lawyers, I love engineers, but it doesn't tell a story. Like, we're growing, we're using it more, we're using it less, community groups use it a lot, therefore, I mean, you know, more people, fewer people, we're gonna start letting people rent the place like they do if they wanna use the library. So when that was built, they took into account that they needed this type of room and that. I mean, like, the whole thing of the ergonomics and the holistic approach is sort of missing. Not to say that it wasn't a good presentation. You did exactly, I think, what you were asked, and I really appreciate it. And then there's the ROI, and I think you just answered that one. So solar panels, theoretically, there's usually a break even about 7 to 10 years, and then it pays back for itself, especially if energy goes beyond, you know. And I think taxpayers should know that the improvements of these things are not aesthetic, or even legal, but they're actually a benefit to someone. And it might be a financial benefit somehow if the solar pays for itself, or I'm assuming the vendor is talking to you about leasing it and then selling it, and we get percentages
Yeah.
and all of that stuff.
Yeah, the ROI component. I know you didn't want a full answer, but
No,
let me
just a
give you a
comment.
couple of response comments. The ROI is a little different for us on a municipal rate that we pay per kilowatt. It's more into the teens. It's like a 15 to 20 year payback, which sometimes isn't so favorable, especially when you look at the technology and where solar's going and really what are panels going to provide now versus what they will in 20 years. So I will tell you that a couple of folks that we talked to has been a lease agreement. So it was a little cleaner.
Right.
It was basically you prepared a space and you collect the money and you let them worry about the savings for their customer base, which would be the residents of the village of Austin.
Right.
So there is a give back to the residents there, and we're doing our part in facilitating that and getting paid while we're doing it to offset some of these costs. With regard to there's some very broad brushes thrown over there. So where you see, I know there is lots of storage, but what we will try to point out in the next presentation is that there is a tremendous amount of exterior storage right now on things that should really be stored inside, like truck tires, tractor tires, materials, and there's also much storage in central garage in the floor space, taking up very valuable spaces where they could be working on a vehicle or having a vehicle that's been worked on and requires more work before it goes out on the road, that's now occupied with.
So that's like that new storage mezzanine? That's what
that's
for?
That's like an open air mezzanine that's
Oh,
going to accommodate
totally missed
a
that.
lot of the
Okay.
central garage
Got
areas.
it.
This is not going to be flipped. The majority of files that are in the map room right now there's a lot of archive stuff.
Okay.
And it is my hope and my belief that when we eventually commence here, and probably before commencement of construction, we're going to have a big purge because there's probably a lot of duplicate and triplicate things that we can get rid of. Some of it they're going through now when they're plotting through the scanning process, right? They're going through documents as they're doing the scanning in the building department right now, and a lot of it's finding its way to the recycle bins now, but all of it will be done prior to commencement of this project, and we want to take the stuff that's necessary to be archived and put that in long-term storage in the basement, and the stuff that's necessary to be retained for hard copies and make that on the second floor in part of that storage area accessible by the planning and building department right outside their office. But again, very broad brush. We're going to be doing this design and ergonomics and deciding specifically what we're going to do all of next year.
Okay.
So that's why we're going to be back in front of you guys. And this is going to be a very drawn-out process. It's not going to be as it's not going to be hasty.
This side of the table have any questions?
I don't really have any questions. I'll just make a comment, and it's not really doesn't really have to do with. It's just a general comment. You know, one of the things that I recall looking at the comprehensive plan, particularly when it comes to our planning and zoning, and is that, you know, I've always found this building in the most oddest locations. It's not the, you know, you definitely need a car, right? And when we're talking about planning and zoning that are, you know, that's where decisions are made about what happens in our community. It would be best in an ideal world for this building to actually be within our village and on the outside. So when I hear about the $4 million price tag, I too want to know, like, what is the future of this building, and what's going to be the purpose for it as we do these renovations, and particularly as technology advances. You know, why are we going to even keep this building? Because I think if the planning and the zoning and, you know, the building department and planning department was in the middle of the village, that would actually be it would do a couple of things that we can't actually do right now, or at least maybe we're not doing. It would be a chance to invite those new developers and people who want to do business in our community, the center of our village, and just see exactly what we have to offer. So that's just a comment that I have about as we begin to renovate this piece of property. What is the purpose? What is the 10, 20-year plan down the road? Because I think because this building is not in the center of our village, that we're missing a good opportunity. And it's been something that's been talked about over the last 10 and 20 years.
So before you answer that, Paul, and your comment is not definitely not the first time me personally, I have heard this. I have heard this from a couple of the chairmen of some of the boards in there. I guess one of the things, if this board or the next board or future boards are looking to bring some of the facilities within the village, within the center of the village, we don't have a facility. So how do we do that? This right now is to create what is their use now. So one of the things that is that has happened in this, and I agree with you. I'm not denying that is essential for us, because back in days, my recollection and for what I was told, all the board meetings, pretty much the planning and zoning, used to happen in the community center. A lot of the stuff happened there. Some way, somehow, they went to this particular building and it stayed there. So because of the use right now that we have, we need to do something with that. Now, the scope of the work and how this board replaces the scope, or how do we design or decide what the scope of the work is in this particular building, that's our decision, sure. That's what we do. Do we make those decisions? And how we see this building to be the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years is also the vision of this board. And then we have to implement that. But until this board decides on where those particular events happen within our village, if we don't have a particular location, I don't think to me, that's not the question. So right now, the question is, do we move forward with this? And how do we move forward with this? So if we can answer that question, then that's what we're looking for, sure. We're not, again, right now we're looking for this. We're trying to do solar panels, maybe a green roof at some point. We're trying to put an ADA. We have a ramp, but we don't have an elevator. So we need to make this to function the needs of that. Right now, this building, even let's say we find a building here within the village, that the village will have to buy a property to put the offices for the building department, planning department, and hold all the meetings, sure, because we don't have one. So we still have DPW. They still have to function there, because where are we going to put them in there? And there's a bunch of other stuff that I think is essential that is not part of this discussion, but we are looking into doing other stuff, maybe with the town at some point, maybe, I don't know. So those are the things, that's sort of like the future, if you want to call it the future of this particular location. So that's, again, take it as however you want to do it, but I think, to me, that's a different conversation.
All right. So to answer part of that is just thinking of a building off the top of my head. If we were to put $4 million into 200 Main Street, would that?
We don't have enough parking.
I mean, that's the center of the village, right? That's bringing people. I'm just thinking about the planning and zoning as far as the employees and day-to-day operations. We have parking lots within the village, so like if we're talking about locations, right, and where we do community meetings, maybe and again, I only made the comment just in general. I didn't want to go down this road, but if we're talking about community meetings, maybe that can still happen at the community center, right? One. But if we're talking about day-to-day operations as far as developers and business people and people who are doing planning in our building, if it was 200 Main Street, just throwing it out there, could you spend the same kind of money for that building? Because now it's just our employees and people finding parking in the downtown area, walking to the area.
Well, going back to what Trustee Quesada said, the original intent of the building when, I believe, I don't want to speak for that administration at the time, but I believe this building was secured by the village, again, 30 plus years ago, with the intent to have a home for Department of Public Works, right? I think it kind of morphed into other, thank you, departments as we moved along. The same way, this building morphed. It used to hold the police department, and now they're in their own building. So I get the police department when they moved. That was the mindset that you're expressing, where hey, let's put the police department right in the hub of the downtown. This is our activity, and this is where we want to be. I'm not sure. I mean, it's a discussion that's really between between you guys.
I'm gonna stop you right there, and he's right. It's a discussion among the five of us. We can definitely $4 million can do a lot of things in any property that we can own. So that's what this board is looking for?
Again,
we need but we need to answer this, because if we move forward with this, then we're going to budget this for a capital project that's going to go forward next year. If the rest of the board feels that this is not a priority to spend $4 million, and there's another property that the village owns that wants to spend the $3 million or $4 million, then that's discussions that we need to have.
Can I just, I think you're not suggesting that garbage trucks
No,
and pickup, dump trucks and everything should be in the heart of downtown, because that's certainly not the best use of square footage in downtown. But what you're talking about is, number one, probably the public meetings for land use, board meetings that the public is really invited to, and then secondarily, some of the offices that the public interfaces with. So I do have a question. We're talking about square footage. And I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit. Do you know the square footage of the interior of 200 Main Street as it's currently designed, and how does it compare to the square footage of the office and conference room and storage spaces here?
I do not, but I'm going to, because I am on the spot, I'm going to guess that it's maybe, and just the front building, not the back building, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to guess it's less than a tenth of the space. Right, there's significant space here. There's a lot of things as you have your discussions. If you're going to have those discussions, I'll ask in advance to be included as you guys see fit, because there's a lot of interwoven operations that have, again, morphed out of our own positions, where Public Works does a lot of things with planning and building, and code enforcement do a lot of things with Public Works. So we're always in and out of each other's offices all the time. As far as the public component, I think the statement of a developer or a business person, I don't know if asking them to go to a satellite area that's relatively close, as the crow flies, is something that's going to be a hindrance. I think more along the lines of the public access to a potential meeting for like a planning meeting or a zoning meeting would be easier to have in the community center. But in the times when there was a very hot topic presentation, I know those boards, when they're expecting larger crowds or they want to solicit more participation, have actually moved the planning board or zoning board or other meetings and had them in the community center so people can attend. So that's just as a little jumping off point as you guys have your discussions. I started off by saying that this project was originally an elevator to facilitate the ADA component of the building that really was left at the doorstep, if you will, when we built the ramp and some of the landscaping out front. But, you know, Andy and I sit together, we talk all the time, and you know, you leave the two of us alone and we have ideas of what we want to do in the buildings, and these are what comes to us over 10 years. And this is all not just pipe dream stuff. This is because what's the mezzanine for? Because we talked to Central Garage, and that's what they need. What does the map room need, and what do you need here? Well, it would be nice if we had this over here, but we really don't need all of that over there. You can move that downstairs. You know, there's a lot of time spent creating this scope.
So we just went back to my request, which is a human element. You sort of have to start with, things don't actually morph. Needs arise and people fill up the gap. It's like water, it'll go to every empty crevice that exists. So you don't want to have empty crevices here. You want to say, we're expecting growth here, and our guy said that the trucks are getting bigger, or they're smaller, or they're this, whatever it is, and we need 3 more bathrooms because there used to be no women working here, and now it's predominantly women. So we need, you know, US Open has what, like 7-to-1 in women's bathrooms. They said the reason they did that is that a lot more women, they take more time. I mean, it's like a simple human, like, analysis.
Yeah.
And once people heard that, they're like, oh, that's why they have more bathrooms. So I think, like, you know, the human element and, like, what the needs are and why you would do it, and, you know, that Andy's leaving, so we need his office, and, you know, that kind of stuff, I think will actually be something that would also do this. And you start with your 18,000 square feet, which we will be using 80% for the core business, and another 20 can be used for community things that might be open to the community. And if you do that, then people like me who come in sort of into the middle of the story,
Yeah.
and most of the citizens who come into the last 5% of the story, I think we'll sit there and go, oh, okay, while you were fixing,
Yep.
you enhanced.
We will most certainly make ergonomics a part of the next presentation, and we will highlight some of the people that are actually doing it now. You have EAC that goes there. You have planning
sure.
and zoning. You have various groups that come in there, including our own internal meetings that we utilize a lot of that space.
I just have one question, I'm sorry that I forgot to ask. So there's one place where you could do electric, right, there's that electric car, what, not a pump,
Right.
the refill, yeah.
Right. It's a dual fuel. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a two port station. Thank you.
Right, and you guys back up, so you said that was Veterans Park in the back over
Yeah,
there?
that's fence. Actually, since you mentioned that, when you look at that, I actually now use that lot, because it's open nicely to the outfield, so people can use
So
that
it
in the
actually
evenings and on
is-
the weekends. It's really good for parents that are picking their kids up.
So technically it's walkable, because you don't have to go on 9A to get to it.
Yes, you can walk through the
You can
park.
actually walk through it, so it is somewhat, although maybe not pretty.
Well, you've
I know-
you've walked all the way up Narragansett at that point, too, so not that many people live there, but technically,
But
yeah.
it doesn't matter, I mean, walk
It's a
is
distance,
walk.
though. It's a distance
From where? Not if you live there, it's not a distance, it's all a matter of where you're walking from.
from the densest neighborhoods.
Right, so my question about that is, any plans for more of them, or that's like beyond the scope of this whole thing?
Well, I know.
I would put them in a different place. is
Right.
what-
I happen to know that the town is installing them in 3 different locations in their parks. So
Okay,
by the end of the year, there'll be 8 charging stations located in the village.
And town.
In town. Yes, thank
Right,
you.
so I think the answer to me was a no, because it's not a part of this, right? You're not.
Yeah, not
No, I'm
well, not
just
here.
asking. Okay.
Not here. I think
You can say no, we're not putting them in.
I don't know if it's
legit.
it's an appropriate use, but maybe as we develop more parking in the park, where you might have that type of transitional use and charging, we could consider something there.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, can we just let John ask a question?
I was gonna say, because I haven't heard anything from.
He's got the mic next to him. The mistake was
why
given, so
not?
Jamie
I'll
gave him the mic. That was the end. You gotta move the mic. It's all about the mic.
So,
Thank you for the presentation. And it was, and thank you, Veronica, for being here and presenting your qualifications for the proposal. You know, our buildings are assets, and they're very important that we keep them updated and keep them improved and continue to see them repurposed and evolve over time. You know, regardless of the public access situation with respect to the building, this is a project that really needs to get done. If we ever decided that this building no longer had a purpose, we would have to sell it. And if we sold it, we'd have to make sure that it had a lot of things in it. Otherwise, we wouldn't get the money it was worth. So if nothing else, after 10 years of doing nothing, and considering what there's so many benefits to this project, you know, the larger which has to do with the solar payback, which, you know, I'm firmly convinced, and my fellow board members realize that, or know this about me, that being in control of our own energy use is critical. And if we have the ability to generate our own power and push that into the grid, that's less money we have to pay to the transmitters of the energy and the energy providers. Now, I happen to think we're living in with rose-colored glasses with respect to energy prices, and I believe that in 5 and 7 years from now, if we don't put solar panels on here, we're all going to be looking pretty stupid. So, you know, I'm all for this. I think that this is a long time coming. I'm interested to see, obviously, the iterations and having the dialogue with my fellow board members. But I'm glad about this. I'm not really concerned about the price tag, because I think even if it takes 15 years or 20 years to pay it back, then there's the 20 years after that. And then there's, I mean, this is a municipal government. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be here for 100 years. So if we start to think about things in that light, then you know, this is a small price to pay for some improvements and for a better facility for the village. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can we just look at the second floor for a second? Now, you're just highlighting the areas where you're going to be doing work, and it seems like there's a lot of work that's intended to be done on the second floor, or does it just look that way because it's more colorful?
It looks that way because they boxed off a space that we're going to touch. But essentially, most of the purple areas you see is just, you know, desk moving and partition moving. The crux of the work on the second floor here is the bathroom, the elevator shaft, second floor stop, and then the rest of the bathroom on this side to provide a men and women facility upstairs. Everything else is really just, and this space over here is going to be the second floor, or above the storage area in the central garage. So this will be a full height, a two floor mezzanine. So you have a mezzanine, and then it will be finished on the top and the bottom. So since we're building the structural component, we might as well utilize the space.
Remember this, the maintenance bay is already 2 stories, so you're taking advantage of that.
So are you actually increasing office space? Because Andy loses his office.
Yes.
But we're not losing Andy. Can we just clarify that? Andy's not going anywhere.
Yeah. This is all, this big area up here, that's all his office right there. No.
And then the file room.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we're going to build a file. We think we're going to build additional file space over here for the building department to come down and go in here, because right now they go into here. We don't know all the details of the ergonomics and who's going to go where. That's why this is a broad brush presentation. It was really tough to put a price on it, but we kind of drilled down and got to where we needed to be, I think. And when we eventually figure that all out, that will start flushing itself out in the 30 and 40% phase.
Yes,
Just one final thing I wanted to say. So
Mike.
you're going to take all the files that are here, and you're going to move them to the basement on the first, obviously in the basement. So that whole area here is just equipment right now that can be moved, and then this is empty. So you have this square footage area that would be all file area, and then you'd be able to purge the files from upstairs in the attic. This attic in this building is overweight, way overweight. So it's it should go here. It should go here.
Don, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so
additionally?
the proposal for the services, I mean, what's the ask here? Are you asking us to engage for, the total amount, or just a phase, or
Well,
which part of this are you asking for in terms of? We want to
Historic-
get it started, right? We want to get the
Right.
design phase going. We want to get to, yeah, what do we, yeah,
But
what's the ask?
The proposal will come in the form, if we go forth, we'll have a resolution at the next legislative session to execute a contract for $370,000. It'll be a turnkey contract for the architectural firm, but it has language in the contract, which, if this goes through, we'll send down to Stewart and review, that is similar to all our other contracts, that it's going to be, you work, you get paid. You work, you get paid. Nothing's going to get has to get paid or executed
Okay.
without deliverable. And the deliverable only gets released by us. So if this gets designed and we get the 30-40%, and lo and behold, we want to stop it in its tracks, they'll get a prorated portion of the contract, well, essentially whatever they did to that point, and then they stop.
So really, what we're talking about is the design development phase, which is the $185,000.
No, the 370 is inclusive of.
No, I mean, we're saying that up to.
That comes later.
Where a contract comes up to $370,000, but as Paul points out, it's on phases. We're not spending it all at once. Each part of each task or each stage has to be completed to Andrew and Paul's satisfaction for it to be dispersed.
Hold on a second, son. The total contract is 300 and something, sure.
370.
So again, I want to go around the board members and making sure, we have to be in agreement if this project goes forward, sure.
Mhm.
So let's say we did. So what are we signing a contract for? Are we signing a contract for the 370?
That's my request, yes.
Now,
That's what I'm saying.
370 is what we're looking to put in the 2018 budget, because this is what we
Capital
anticipate
budget,
being
yeah.
able to complete as a capital plan.
Right.
The first phase, if we're going to be voting on anything next week to move forward with, it's just task one, which is the 108,000. That's all we're.
No, you're going to be voting on the full contract for $370,000.
Okay,
Yeah, that's it. That's,
The only thing that might not be charged in 2018 would be the CM work, the construction management work.
okay.
So.
but we'll
yes,
deal with that
that'll
like
be
we
in
do
the
with
following
everything
budget
else.
year,
Right.
but
We're voting on the contract, and then we'll just pay it out in pieces. That makes
Right.
sense. Fine.
And because that component was just announced here, that's actually pulled back, because that is our office space, obviously, so Andy and I are going to have a large participation in that, even more so than we do on the other projects, because it's right in our space, so it's a very competitive number for CM services.
So I guess my question is, please go around the board, I guess, the board members.
What are we
If
doing?
they agree or not.
Isn't it going for isn't it gonna be a resolution next week?
Well, there'll be a resolution at the,
So are
To
we all
vote on.
supportive of putting this on as a
Correct.
resolution, that we
Yes.
would be empowering the manager to sign a contract reflective of what we just discussed?
in support of that. John, you said you are?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I think the sense of the board is that, yes. Stuart, can we please put together a resolution for next week that we will be empowering the manager to sign a contract?
Sure, I'll be in touch with Paul and Andy, and we'll put that all together.
thank you.
Great.
Tom,
Where's Tom? Oh, there he is.
Did you
No.
want, do we need to hear from Tom?
No?
Okay, Tom,
Oh.
please, I didn't see you in the corner there.
Say something.
Go ahead. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I believe that the village should provide the financial means to pay for this contract. This is not something that we really anticipated to just put in the general fund budget in 2018. We do have the option to issue a serial bond. I believe it would only have a 5-year useful life, but I think that this might be the perfect type of item to use our accumulated fund balance to pay for. So I think my recommendation would be, and I haven't even discussed this with the village manager as yet, is that the recommendation be that the money be set aside from the general fund and put into a capital project.
And then not borrow for it, not put it in, not even plan to put it in a ban in the 2018, just to, as restricted funds for 2018, anticipating that it's gonna
That
move
could be
forward.
an option to, issue a ban or a bond, but, it's the perfect type of one-time expenditure that would be a good use of accumulated fund balance.
That's surplus for this year.
Yes.
Excellent, okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. Excellent. All
good
right.
thing.
Do
Yeah,
we have-
that-
do we
that
have
works
more,
even better,
Do we
I
have
think.
more screen things happening tonight?
Good stuff.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Veronica. Thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
All right. Mark on.
Thank you, Mayor. What was next on our agenda dealt with the authorization to advertise for bids for the Broadway Bridge rehabilitation. That was discussed extensively at a prior work session, and there will be a resolution presented to the board next week to authorize the advertising for bids with regard to that project. So I just want to let the board know that we'll have that resolution for the November 1st session.
To advertise for bids for the rehabilitation of the Broadway Bridge?
Correct.
Is there anything more that we need to know about it?
No, you had a lengthy presentation,
We sure did.
as you know, so that's why.
Very excited about that. What? The double arch with the netting is in the new Spike Lee movie? That's exciting. It'd be nice if he came back a year from now and you could see the much prettier arch. Maybe they'll still be in post-production and we can get some shots for him. Okay. Then moving right along.
Thank you, Mayor. Next we have some folks here from the steamer truck folks with regard to the resolution which I would propose to present next week to the board to advertise for bids for the new pumper fire apparatus. This is with regard to Steamer Company. As I said, I do have some members here from the truck committee if there are any questions with regard to that. This is, I believe, and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is already in the budget. So that's why we're just seeking to advertise for bids with regard to this. And we have a resolution which we'll present to the board next week. But as I said, we do have members of the truck committee here if there are any questions from the board members.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Codman, would you like to comment on this initially, since you are the liaison?
Yeah, this is a request that's been in the works and in the capital budget for a while. The bid was somewhat, the process of putting everything together was somewhat delayed, but it's all been put together. It's been reviewed by the chiefs. It's gone to Dave Stone. It's gone back to the chiefs. It's gone through, a rigorous review, and the current vehicle has gone its 20 years, and it's time to replace it. So, I'm happy to support this resolution, and I look forward to the support of my fellow trustees.
Would anybody from the truck committee like to comment?
Okay. That's fine.
Please come to the
gotta
microphone
come
so
to
that
the
the public
microphone.
can hear you. Yes. You can really talk for
This
10
is,
seconds if you want to.
I might blush a little bit. I don't like doing microphones.
Oh, come
This
on.
is Mr. Drohan, who's the president of.
On behalf of Ossining Steamer Company, I would like to thank the mayor and the board of trustees. Our committee has rigorously put together an apparatus that I believe is going to serve both the village and the town extremely well for the next 20, 25 years. If there are any questions, I could field them, or the chairman of the truck committee.
Any questions?
No.
Can we write down that 25-year thing?
say that.
Just moved it up by 5 years.
The truck right now is 21, so.
I don't think any of us are going to be around the table, so we need to put that in a lockbox somewhere for
But there will be
future
people looking at this
boards.
video exactly 20 years from now.
Video, well, I decided to put video.
YouTube never dies.
You're on
Okay.
video. It's cameras everywhere. You're on. Smile.
Oh, can I tell a joke then?
Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll have that resolution for next week, Mayor.
Excellent. We look forward to that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mayor, next on the agenda with the treasurer, Tom Warren, are proposed revisions to the village's fee schedule. Let me just pass this down to everybody. I apologize, Tom, I
Yep.
did not do my...
We have schedules.
Oh, good.
Yes, thank you again. For the agenda packet, I had updated and provided a memo providing some history on the fees that the village clerk had asked the board to address so that she could prepare the application fees for the coming year. And when I was here 2 weeks ago, we talked about getting some comparable fees. So in the memo that was sent out for the agenda packet, there was their survey, and I took the survey results and I put it on a schedule that was just passed around to make it a little bit easier to evaluate the different comparable fees. And then this afternoon, Stuart, Mariana, and I sat down to review our current fees and look at some of these comparable rates. And just for a point of the discussion, we did provide a column of recommended fees as a starting point so that we wouldn't be here all night trying to figure out what to do. One of the big things that we found was that generally the fees for these items have not been updated generally since 2009 or 2008. I think we actually found that the Sidewalk Cafe permit probably hasn't been changed since the local law was first adopted in the late 1990s.
Until we changed it with our new law. You're talking about Cabaret?
No, the Sidewalk Cafe.
Oh, Sidewalk Cafe.
Sidewalk
Oh,
Cafe.
yes, yes, okay.
So, one second, so that was, whenever that was done, we used to charge $50 for that?
Plus $10
and we
per
still
linear
charge,
foot.
and we still charge $50 for it. But you know, generally, you know, and this isn't, you know, a big revenue source for the village, but you know, generally, when the expenses overall go up like 2% per year, and if other revenues stay flat, then that really puts a pressure on the tax levy, and especially when we have the tax cap that we have to comply with. It makes things a little bit more difficult. So, and also when the fees don't increase, it just over time decreases the value of what that fee is. So, although it's not a large revenue amount, I think we did agree in our group that that there should be some periodic evaluation and increase of the departmental fees just to keep pace with inflation at a minimum.
I'm just surprised that Sleepy Hollow, Tarrytown, and Peekskill don't have any dry cleaning laundromat fees, or did we just not did we just not find out in some cases?
From what I understand, they called each of these communities and they did go through the list, and
So if there's nothing, that means there's zero.
apparently there wasn't any such fee.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so then we're definitely more than nothing.
More than nothing?
Yes.
Okay.
With the refreshment and with the dry cleaning laundromat. And for folks at home, we're looking at comparative pricing, Ossining Village, Croton-on-Hudson, Pleasantville, Sleepy Hollow, Tarrytown, and Peekskill. So that's a bunch of nearby villages, and the Peekskill is actually the most similar in size and demographics to us than any of these others. And we're looking at the alarm user permit, amusement device, cabaret license, refreshment business, dry cleaning laundromat, and sidewalk cafe. The two areas that haven't had any recommendations for change are cabaret license, which we just updated this year when we created a tiered system, and we looked at the others at that time, and the laundromat, which is we're suggesting should remain at $30 a machine. It was just changed with this year's budget. So I'm kind of surprised those are even listed here, because I thought we were just looking at the potential fees that we might change, like some of the ones that you noted that haven't been updated in a number of years.
Well, initially the list came from the village clerk, was that she wanted to list, she wanted us to at least look at all those fees that have an advance application that she needs to prepare and send out for
Okay.
these different type of items that go into effect for 2018.
Okay. I mean, okay. The two that have no recommended change are the ones that were updated this year, so that makes sense.
That's correct.
So, all right, I'll listen to hear what other people have to say, and I think John has a thought.
Yeah, currently, I guess the registration for an alarm user permit is $35, whether it's residential or commercial. Is that what?
That's correct, and that's something that we talked about quite a bit. You know, and especially since we saw other communities had a different rate structure for residential or commercial, we thought that that would be,
Okay.
you know, helpful to the residents here in the village that have alarm systems versus the commercial businesses that might actually have a larger or more complicated alarm system.
Well, I'm fine with this.
Other comments?
Fine with the recommendation.
Same here.
I'm good.
Yeah, just for folks who aren't looking at this, I like the fact that you mentioned the alarm user permit, and breaking it up to residential and commercial means that in comparison to all of those other communities, we're still the lowest for residential with the one exception of Peekskill in the initial year, but then the annual renewal, we are as low as Peekskill, which is $40. And the commercial, we are as low, we are only $5 more than Peekskill, which is the absolute lowest for commercial, but then in the annual renewal, people will be spending less over time because we're at $50 for the annual renewal for commercial, which is the lowest of any community that has the commercial distinction, which most of them do at this point. So I'm very comfortable with that. The additional devices is what we're increasing the amusement devices? Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Next step.
This is going to then be reflected in the budget, and Mary Ann can go ahead and start printing out her permits with the anticipation that we're going to
pass
approve
a
these in the
Yes,
budget?
next
we just agree
board
to the
meeting, there'll be a resolution to establish these fees, just like the board had done for the train station parking
So
tanks.
update our fee schedule.
Right,
Okay.
this is particularly important because the cabaret, which has changed before, but refreshment and sidewalk cafe are on the large application. So we want to have that all changed with those fee schedules, so
Okay.
Mary Ann starts sending it out.
Okay.
Okey-dokey.
Thank you, Tom.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Oh, moving right along.
Yes, we are. Contrary to what some people.
You know what, it's
want me to
9
wait?
o'clock, which is, why don't we just take a quick 5 minutes, and then we will come back and do, yeah, I know, Jamie, sorry about that. But we're going to get into something that might be a little bit more conversational, so let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. Thank you. Mr. Kahan.
Now, I've handed out to everyone a draft ordinance regarding our prior discussion involving term limits, attendance, and training requirements for boards and commissions. And I apologize for getting this to you late, but it took a while to put everything together. What I've put together here is, as part of what would be proposed local law 9 of 2017, there would be a new chapter added to the code called boards and commissions, which would effectively have a lot of general information as to our boards and commissions. It would include the language that we discussed previously involving the Village of Tuxedo Park regulation, which essentially would allow the Board of Trustees to approve an appointment of someone who has actually served beyond the term limit in the event that for some reason they can't find they can't find anybody else, or allow the person to serve even if they have not been out from that position for 1 year. Just briefly to remind folks, for those boards where there is a 5-year term, the discussion was that it would be 2 consecutive terms. For 3-year terms, it would be 3 consecutive terms, and for 2-year terms, it would be 4 consecutive terms. There is a provision in, which should be in Chapter 6, that the term limits will only apply to appointments made after the effective date of the local law, so that folks who have served for long times on certain boards should not think that they're suddenly term limited out. Now, that may be a discussion you folks wish to have. I understand.
Who put that in?
When did that become a point of discussion?
It came because
Because we addressed that with the Tuxedo Park Day, didn't we?
well, the Tuxedo, Yes, well, what this is if you get beyond that, this is more that if people have been serving for a couple of terms beforehand, you could, in essence, start the clock with the term once you do the local law. That's why it's a subject for discussion. Other jurisdictions have it that way. That's why I put that in there.
Did we discuss that and I'm forgetting that? From
I don't know if we have had a specific discussion, but I put that
No, we
in there.
didn't discuss
but
that specifically.
But we can certainly, I'm happy to, again, this is all put in there. I will X that out. The training that's no problem. Attendance requirement, 75% of the meetings in any given calendar year. And if the attendance requirement is not met, it is a ground for removal from that particular board or commission. The chairperson of each board or commission will report, depending, it could be the village manager, it could be the board of trustees, as to the attendance of the members of that particular board for the preceding year, to advise if there are any issues with regard to that. There are a number of boards where there are training requirements by law, and that specifically refers to planning and zoning. This ordinance would extend the training requirements as well to EAC and to the Historic Preservation Commission, both then to have 4 hours of training in any given calendar year. That training can actually be done in-house and can be approved by the Board of Trustees as to what has to be done.
Is there in the charters, I don't remember, so now people have to take attendance, right? People need to take minutes, take attendance. And do all the boards know that, and do they file it somewhere?
File what?
Well, the attendance.
Well, to date, I don't think it's well, on some of the boards, planning, zoning, HPC, for example, roll call is taken at the beginning of the meeting, and that's on the record. So,
And where does that record get filed?
well, it's part of the minutes. So
Where does that all get filed?
well, they're online, and they're online, and they're also with the Department of Planning and Development.
The minutes.
Yeah.
It's just like if we go to our website where we find our
Does
minutes.
the Board and Rec do that? The Parks and Rec also do that?
I do not know what other boards do in terms of attendance. I'm only familiar with the land use boards. And those specifically do take it, because if you look, they will actually say who's there and who's absent.
Well, the Parks and Rec does. I just don't know what he does with all that stuff. So I guess it doesn't have to be in here, but we probably are going to need to do some education around all these commissions as to what all this means, right? Because I don't know where they file. I mean, they do take notes and minutes and they send it around. I just don't know where they file it per se.
Yeah, but not every board does, right? I mean, because
That's
you're
what I'm-
liaison to more than one board, do they all take minutes?
That's my question. I don't know. Now they're going to have to take
Yeah.
attendance in minutes, because then
Well, minutes are different, because we're not, because we're not talking about minutes in this
You're
statute.
talking about attendance. They have to
Attendance,
go around, they gotta
attendance
write-
and their training requirements for those 4 boards.
Right, but all the boards will have to take attendance.
Correct. And they would have to be reported back to be it village manager or the board December 1st of, approximately December 1st of every calendar year.
So then
I asked this because when we went and looked at boards and councils, did we not all remember how difficult it was to find actual records of any of these things that we thought were happening? So that's what not started, but that was a part of what we discovered. Some boards do so. I think just the consistency and explaining to the different boards, like to the chairs, like, so this is what you need to do, this is how you file it. I mean, this will bring it to life.
if we're looking to, and I don't know that if we're gonna be ready to enact this after tonight anyway, but under the section 4 training and attendance requirements, which is, a local law that's referring to any of the boards and commissions, it doesn't explicitly say, I don't believe, that attendance will be taken and filed with whatever, the clerk's office, the village manager's office, whatever we want it to be filed with.
It does not here, but
Okay.
further on with regard to each individual board. Now, I recognize there are some boards that are, I realize, but for the boards that are referenced within our code, what I've done is subsequent to the new chapter 6, there are civilian police complaint, there's EAC, there's HB. So for them, it specifically says that as of December 1st, the chair must send in writing to the village manager, the director of planning, a list of basically, what the attendance has been for that year. It can be included in the section 4 here because, as the mayor has noted to me, there are a number of boards that are not referenced in our code. And so we can certainly include under section 4 just to specify that's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because there are other, there's rec advisory, there's arts project, there's,
Yeah.
other.
Downtown Development Fund Council is listed
I mean,
in the
there's-
legal document, but not in the code, and
Yeah,
so we
okay.
want
It's
to.
a different kind of thing.
Well, I should point out that section 4D does say the chairperson of each board and commission shall notify the village manager in writing of any member who fails to comply with the minimum requirements for meeting attendance and or training in any calendar year. So that was sort of in a general sense would apply.
Right. So do we need to explicitly say take attendance at each meeting? So, I mean, the problem is some committees don't meet every month, so it's not like they're necessarily going to have 12 meetings and.
They don't need to. It's a percentage. If they meet 5 times a year.
Understood, but we don't have any documentation of a lot of them is the point. So they should be submitting attendance records following each meeting,
Right.
right? Otherwise D is never going to be able to happen. They should also give us their schedule.
You should give us the schedules as well,
Because they're public meetings.
and then I can post them. Only the land use boards,
The only ones that are posted right now are land use boards.
that would help with the new.
I guess that's a
Website.
question. Are they public meetings? Like under the open meetings law, what's the requirement
They-
for the others? Like for
Generally, they're not. If the entity is not, if the board is not one that actually makes a decision in terms of decides
Park
something,
and Rec is actually an advisory.
then it is
Right.
not subject to open meetings.
Okay. They're
Okay.
an advisory.
right. So most of them are not then. Civilian Police Complaint Review Board.
To the extent that it could, to the part of the board where it makes a decision, that could be considered open meetings for that particular.
Except would the
purpose.
decisions that they're making be related to personnel?
Then, well, then.
Which you
then-
could do, you can do publicly, but people
You don't have
typically
to do
tend
that.
to opt to do that in
Correct.
executive session.
Same with the Board of Ethics. We could work the same way. 'Cause although Board of Ethics is different, I apologize, because they are making a recommendation.
Yep.
They are not in fact coming up with a determination. So.
Okay,
but
I'm
we
just
can do
trying to
But
understand it.
I can work on that on that subsection D. I mean, it's a question if you actually need to legislate that the chair will take attendance every meeting, or simply, you tell the chair, whoever it is, that this is one of the responsibilities of the chair is, you just have to take attendance. Because at the end of every December, you have to provide in writing, if you think it.
I'm just trying to understand the human factor of
Okay.
people who disappear
It can be, it can certainly be.
and don't follow through, and if they follow through first 5 months of the year, and then we have that record, and
That can be done. Going forward also, with regard to the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board, one of the things that was discussed was the method of selection of members. So it has been changed in the proposal here that instead of using a nominating committee as well as the board having its own appointees without the nominating committee, that all 5 civilian members would be, selected by the board and appointed by the board. So there would be no more use of the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board nominating committee.
so items 3 and 4 of section A are totally removed,
That's correct.
and most of paragraph 1.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. And for the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board, it has the specifics there with regard to attendance. And this is one thing I did want to discuss with the board. Training is obviously a very significant part of what goes on with this board. And the question is, did the board want, I have it here, that noncompliance with the training requirements is a proper cause for removal. And I just, want to make sure the board is, thinks that that's acceptable. I do have that with regard to the land use boards. but this is, one of the training situations, and the training here is specifically set out as to what the training has to be. So, I wanted it made very clear, I think, in this ordinance or with the revision, that, if you don't comply with that and you don't comply with your attendance requirements, either one can provide you with a ground for, being out. So we just have that in there.
My understanding with the training for this is it's actually, and I think you've spoken about this before, Trustee Bazemore, the training for this committee is often done during the meetings.
Correct.
So anybody who's attending regularly would
Be able to
inherently
do it.
get their training. So
Right.
I think it's perfectly appropriate to be in there.
Okay.
But it kind of will take care of itself in that regard.
Then previously, we had discussed amendments to Chapter 119, which is the Environmental Advisory Council. Rather than have that as a standalone new law, I encompassed it within this local law. And just so the board should note, next week, the board will be considering a resolution to adopt Local Law 7, which relates to the Landlord-Tenant Relations Council. That ordinance does have the term limit that we've discussed, and does have the 75% attendance requirement that we've discussed. But since we've already had that as part of that local law, I did not include it, obviously, here, because it would just be needlessly repetitious. Again, it has the EAC. We have added in a provision with regard to attendance requirements with the minimum of 4 hours. That's, again, something that the chairperson would be responsible of notifying the manager and director of planning and development that if someone has not complied with that. The important thing to note with all of these, and it's taken pretty much from the village law, is that no action by any of these boards will be invalidated if members have not met the attendance requirements or have not met the training requirements. So someone can't challenge a vote on that particular ground. Next, we have with regard to the Code Board of Appeals, which is something the board only recently put into effect, but this will now put in the attendance requirements. We'll also put in the term limits and the requirements with regard to complying with the attendance requirements. And as I mentioned, this has also now been added for the 3 land use boards who are referenced in Chapter 270, which is the zoning ordinance. First would be historic preservation, next would be zoning, and the last would be the planning board. All will have term limits. They are all 5-year boards, so it would be only 2 consecutive terms with the option, and then they would have to sit out for 1 year if they wanted to apply for membership again. They all have training requirements. Again, HPC does not have statutory training requirements, unlike planning and zoning, but as it is a land use board, personally, I thought it would be beneficial, and certainly up to the board, to include a similar training requirement with regard to the HPC members. And again, the village can come up with its own training in terms of what that is. Similarly, we have with regard to both the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board in terms of both training requirements, attendance, and term limits. So the ordinance, as I said, in addition to having a new chapter for boards and commission, deals with all of the boards and commissions which appear within the code of the village. So they're specifically dealt with. The one exception, landlord-tenant, but that's going to be dealt with via Local Law 9, which is on for next week. So that's long and short of it.
So a lot of these, as we look through, it's a lot of the same, what is now our new boilerplate of information for the attendance and training as appropriate.
And Mayor, in response to something you had asked with regard to specifically the Tuxedo Park legislation.
Correct.
That is in it would be section 3 of subparagraph F, which is actually on page 2 of the handout. And it's if the Board of Trustees or the village manager are unable to appoint a new member to such board or commission for which the Board of Trustees or village manager makes such appointment as a result of lack of interest or for any other reason, despite best efforts to do so, the Board of Trustees may by resolution following notification from the village manager for appointments to boards or commissions made by the village manager, or by notification to the Board of Trustees for appointments to boards or commissions made by the Board of Trustees, either waive the term limit requirement and allow for the reappointment of a then current member to an additional term, or waive the requirement for the one-year hiatus between terms and allow the appointment of a former member whose term ended less than 1 year prior thereto to a new term, which is based upon what Tuxedo Park has. So that sort of the opt-out provision that's there, but it has to be done by resolution of this board.
Right, and this is very important, particularly right now, as we're looking to implement these term limits, because it's a transitional time, and there are likely going to be people that we would like to have continue so that we can have some institutional knowledge and continuity, particularly on some of the land use boards that have a number of long-term members. So that's fine. I know we had a lengthy discussion about it last week. Thank you for pointing out to us where it is. And so with that in place, and I'm not seeing anybody objecting to the way that Stuart's presented this, then the second sentence in section 3, paragraph A, will not be in there because we've accounted for the potential to have.
That would come out from both paragraphs A, B, and C because they all follow.
Was it in all of them?
It's
Oh,
all-
there you go.
Yeah, it's
Thank
all
you.
there.
All right, so
we can do that. I did also, for those 3 paragraphs, include the last sentence, which provides, terms shall not be considered consecutive when the person being appointed has not been a member of such board or commission for a period of 1 year or more.
Right.
But we can take out the second sentence of those because the Tuxedo Park effectively covers that.
And it should be made clear that if somebody is reached their term limit for one board or commission or count committee, they don't have to wait to apply to a different board or committee. In fact, we would encourage that because that would be really valuable to have somebody who served, on a land use board decide that they want to serve on the recreation advisory board and be able to share some of their knowledge in different areas of the village.
Subsection E,
Okay.
last sentence says, this subsection shall not prohibit a member from applying for membership with another board or commission after his/her term expires.
Thank you.
So
Excellent.
they are certainly welcome to do so. So that's the proposal with regard to term limits, training, and attendance requirements for our boards and commissions.
So we would put this on for public hearing.
This can be scheduled, we can schedule this for a public hearing. If there's a resolution next week for the public hearing. Public hearing could be, 2 weeks after, which would be the 15th of November. Or if you wanted, you could put it off till the first Wednesday in December, whatever. Because we already have a public hearing, I know, on November 15th with regard to the zoning text amendment for 145 North Highland. But we can certainly call for the public hearing,
Yeah, we may have to talk about that. We
What?
may change it, November 15.
Oh yeah, because we have budget meeting challenges on our calendar, so we'll have to.
If you need to,
Oh, we did have a public hearing scheduled for the 15th already, don't we? Yeah.
that's what I mentioned, that's the.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got distracted.
So we can, that can be, so this can be called for public hearing.
We can.
This we call for public hearing in December, if we, our first meeting in December, if you wanted to. I mean,
Okay.
that's fine. But we can put on for a resolution to call for the public hearing so that this
Got
can
it.
be, put around.
I'm looking at my scribbles here.
Yeah.
On the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board, paragraph A, section 4/3, the alternates. I think it's really frustrating to. I've been an alternate on a jury. It's really annoying. To be an alternate on a committee that requires you to have training and attendance. Like, I think we should remove alternates.
Do we have any alternates now?
On that committee, you don't have full membership anyway.
Right. So
And this is the only committee that has alternates in its code, right?
Right. There are other municipalities particularly with their land use boards that provide for alternates. And also because there may be conflicts of interest so that people recuse themselves. Correct. So you do that. But currently, this is the only board that specifically has a provision for alternate members. So
I would leave it.
Why bother having to go back to it if you have some issues? I can see quorum issues coming up pretty easily.
So, do we have an expectation that the alternate is attending meetings? Because if they're not attending meetings, then they're not getting training.
Well,
No, we don't, but we shouldn't put something in our legislation if it's never going to be functional.
Well, you only would have an alternate if you have a full deck of cards in the committee, correct? That's the
I believe your mic is off, Rika.
Nope. Getting tired, I'm leaning back, sorry.
It's also off.
It's off and I'm leaning all the way back. So the only way you have an alternate is when it's a full deck of cards in the committee.
Right.
So so if that's a situation, if we get into that, we should have a provision. I mean, we haven't seen that scenario probably in a decade or so, maybe longer. So it doesn't go into effect unless it's a full house. And it's really for a quorum situation, I would assume.
The code now provides that alternates will serve on the CPCRB only when a member is absent or unable to participate due to a conflict of interest. And that's the provision that's there.
Right, so you're asking somebody to go, stay attuned, be trained, and all that on a maybe, but probably realistically, you have a quorum issue.
I think first we need to get full membership on
Yeah.
board.
That's what I'm saying. It's only.
I agree that this is a non-issue right now, but we're updating the code. We're voting on it.
Right.
So I don't. We had a conversation about alternates with the Code Board of Appeals because in the previous iteration of it, that was there, and for pretty much the exact same reasons. These are people who have to get training. They have a role to play. Basically, an alternate is somebody that they'll only serve if a member is absent or unable to participate due to a conflict of interest. So when something suddenly occurs where there's a quorum issue and there's too many people with a conflict of interest, or for whatever reason we can't get a quorum, we're just basically picking somebody up. We're saying, hey, we think theoretically you might be a good member, but you're never going to bother to show up. You're never going to get any training unless and until we have a quorum
I
problem.
think the alternate implies that you have to be trained. I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping it, because if it is a committee that there are more than,
So you're saying the person. So then, does it say in here that the alternate has the same expectations for attendance and training as the appointed members?
Look it up right now.
Because that is fine if we can find somebody to do it.
That's something that I didn't realize on this part. If we want to make something, or make some changes, maybe we should have a police chief give us some feedback, because he does have a selection of 2 members from this particular board. So if anything, can we do this on the continuing business next week?
Sure.
And we can clarify some of the stuff, and then
Well, that's fine, just so the board is aware. Section 8-6C, all members and alternate members will receive training. So
Okay.
alternates
Thank you.
are to receive training.
So that's somebody who really, really, really wants to be on there, and we just don't have a spot for them yet. Okay. So it's a moot point for
and the board is full. Those 2 things have to occur.
well,
And you have to appoint them. I mean, it's not
presumably,
just
because
anybody.
I was going to say, because they don't just. Let's say we have a full board and then we have 2 alternates, and somebody moves off the board. The alternate doesn't automatically get bumped up. We would have to appoint them to that seat. So.
Yeah. I think it really is for a quorum issue. I think there probably was foreseen a situation where in small villages and towns like this, a conflict of interest theoretically could occur across the board. Like 3-4 people on a committee could be affected by it. So,
Well,
I mean, that's
that
what
could
they're
be true
doing.
of any of our land use boards too. And all right, we'll see how it goes.
So I understand from the sense of the board, you don't want to call for a public hearing next week. You want to do this during continuing business with the chief?
You know, the reason why I'm saying that is because if we are modifying some stuff.
Yeah.
We are doing this. He does appoint two members on.
We're not
on this
taking that away
committee.
from him.
No, I understand that. No, I
You're
know
just
that.
looking for input,
I
because
just-
he's a
yeah.
part of it.
Okay. However, my only issue, and I just want to raise this, is you might want to have this in effect before January 1st, because that's when a lot of your terms expire.
Right,
can
and
we-
there's a time lag.
And we
So
send
can
it to
we
him
do
and
a-
ask him for feedback.
Yeah.
And then,
This
and
will be
then,
at next week's meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's do that.
So we can put it on for
Yep.
resolution to call for a public hearing, but we're gonna make sure that we hear back
Yep.
from the
Yeah,
chief
I will
prior
follow up
to
with him.
next week.
Not a
when we have
problem.
public
Thank
hearing.
you.
All right. All righty.
The public hearing date would be for beginning of December.
December, exactly, correct. Okay. Thank you. Okay. And last on our work session agenda tonight is the revisions to the noise ordinance that we discussed. I sent it through to you folks earlier, and I'll just pass this through, so if anyone needs to see it again. Based upon what my recollection was, the limitations relating to gas-powered leaf blowers were taken out, because I think that was a matter for further discussion. And although the definition for gas-powered leaf blower is in here because it is referenced, there is no, shut-off period for, a particular number of months. We have left in the provisions relating to the generators, which is something that was discussed previously. But again, what has been taken out from the earlier iteration were the specific limitations relating to the gas-powered leaf blowers. And if I'm incorrect, it was my sense that the board wanted to have further discussion on that before we put that portion before trustees, before the board.
I'll start. I think initially 2 weeks ago when we first started talking about the gas-powered leaf blowers, there was some consensus to limit at least a portion of the year for gas-powered leaf blowers for everyone. And I know we begin to have other conversations of outright banning leaf blowers, but I would hate to, the enemy of the perfect, or the enemy of the good is the perfect. I would hate to miss this opportunity to have some type of legislation modifying leaf blowers just because we may want to pick this up at another time. We oftentimes get busy with other things and things pop up, and it'll be a year and a half down the line and someone's saying, hey, what about those leaf blowers? So I just don't know what the feelings of the board is, because I know 2 weeks ago we at least had some agreement. So I would rather take some agreement than no agreement at all.
No, that kind of reminds me to a legislation that we started many years back, in regards to the bees and chickens. And,
Oh, good Lord. We took care of bees.
I know.
Wow, really, on your way out the door, just like kicking the nest.
I'll bring that back.
All right. The one sticking point that we had was the 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 noon, and then it turned into, and in fact, you were the one who said, I'd actually like an outright ban, and we got some more details about concerns about health and safety, and that made us wonder if we needed to have a larger conversation. I appreciate the don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, wanting to have some sort of restrictions and incorporate that here, as we had previously discussed. I don't know that we ever had any consensus, though, on the Saturday, Sundays, and holidays start time. Do we want to just leave that as it is?
I would rather leave it as it is, get the partial for
the one thing that we could all
that
agree
we all
on, the
could-
one, and just
that
the
at
status
least
quo,
the
if we can't get status
yeah.
quo.
At least the majority of us could agree on it. I would rather do that, and then we can call for a public hearing.
Now there's a lot of underlining and there's a lot of bracketing
So
here.
nobody's with me on 10 a.m.?
No.
Deeply
As my
disappointed.
neighbor's dog woke me up barking all morning long, well before 9 or 10 a.m. There's lots of things
Well,
that could.
that's not in the snow ordinance.
I know it's
That's
not.
Why?
I know.
Well, I just
Sorry.
want
There's
to
less
express
things
my
to go.
disappointment
Okay.
that you're not going to make it later on Saturday, Sunday, and holidays. And I'll certainly let my constituents know about the decision about the timing, but
Okay.
that is what that is. My feeling was that we wanted to kind of get this through in deference to the folks that are trying to put this generator in.
Scarborough Manor.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
that was,
that
yeah,
was
that's
what
definitely, that was
Yeah,
definitely
right.
agreed
So,
upon for tonight.
so to the extent that, I want to move this forward, the issue of the banning of gas-powered leaf blowers, that's something I'm in favor of, so.
I know you are. Stuart, can you help us understand, because I know this is draft 2, when I look at page 2, item 3 in section D, if we were to follow through with what trustee Bazemore is just suggesting, which is putting some restrictions, what's now going to be in it? I should be able to follow this, but we've kind of done some
The,
backtracking, so.
we had, at one point it had been, I think, let's say May 15th to September 30th.
Right.
That it would be an outright ban. They could not use it during those couple of months. And that was and I apologize, I should have brought, may actually have, I have the earlier iteration here.
Oh, great.
Amazing. And the earlier had provided the use of gas-powered leaf blowers in the village of Ossining is prohibited from June 1 through and including September 30 of each year. During those months when the use of gas-powered leaf blowers is permitted, the noise levels detailed in the code must be complied with. I know that there was some discussion about the 1 or 2 family homeowners, and Trustee Bazemore, and I think the sense of the board was to take that section out. But that was, in the earlier draft, there was a ban from June 1 through and including September 30 of each year.
So Quantel, you're suggesting let's include that provision.
Absolutely.
Basically, no gas-powered leaf blowers in the summer.
Basically.
That's what that is.
Essentially.
So it is the first step in having some restrictions on the gas-powered leaf blower, in addition to just defining it.
So I'm opposed to that, and I said that, and it doesn't make a difference. It's just, if you're going to do stuff like that, you need to grandfather people who currently have equipment. I have to tell you that I'm always amazed what catches people's attention. And sure enough, last night, this was the topic of conversation at a function I went to, because I happened to be seated with a bunch of people from Ossining, as it happens. Of all the things we discuss, this is the one, because 2 of them just bought equipment. So they're very much aware of what they just paid for their equipment and how they use it and what they do, because they don't use landscapers, actually their own, but they just paid a small fortune for all this stuff. So, no, I don't want to sneak this in through the side door and all that. It requires a different discussion. I'm not for all of this stuff. I just think that this is about the noise. That's what we agreed to last week. So I don't want to ban in the summer and,
I just sneak this in through the side door.
It's not sneaking. It was kind of here already. So
We had an
and I
hour-long
know-
conversation.
and
Yeah,
again,
now,
I-
and we
I-
agree, and then we didn't have
Yeah.
consensus on it. So
Yeah,
the
but
idea that we
at
had
one time we
consensus
did,
is
so
not
I'm-
true. No, we didn't.
Rico wasn't here.
If there's 3, I'm not looking for all 5. I'm just looking for 3.
He's looking for more than 3.
So that would be
So
no
whatever.
with me. I'm with Rika. It's just more than that. It's like we're talking about like landscapers, neighbors that actually use all that stuff. We're talking about like we controlling what they do and how they do the work. And I'm not. I don't do that. I'm not part of that. If that's what you guys, the rest of the board, if there's an agreement that they want to do it, then that's up to you guys. But I'm not.
I don't have a problem with overtime eliminating. I have a problem with how we're doing it. I want to deal with the one topic, and then I want to have a serious conversation, and not just because 3 articles by 2 people or 1 person were sent, but have a conversation about the environment, what this does to jobs, what it does to things, and make decisions for the community about like how people, including people who do this for a living, bring this over time, which is why I asked the question about, the timing. Even if we pass it today, can it be a 3-year or 4-year or whatever year? Even this noise thing didn't come from us. It came from an issue at Scarborough Manor that then brought it to our attention. I'm really not for one person writing a letter and jumping on this because, this is not a community discussion when that happens. And I really do think we employ, I don't even know who we employ. I have to now research it and all that, but I have a sense when you drive around this place that it employs a lot of people and it's going to be costly to a whole bunch of people. You know, I drive electric. I know what those cars cost. It isn't easy to just say everybody use electric cars. They're expensive. And even though in the long term they save money, it's a decision. And I don't think this is the right way to do it. I'm sorry. I mean, and that's why I don't think we should do it. I don't like the way it's being done. I think noise, let's get Scarborough Manor going. They legitimately came to us. They brought something to our attention. It created more of a conversation. Now we can move to step 2, which is what do we want to do with something that's really an environmental issue, more than anything else.
Well, okay, so I want to be clear about how we got to this point, because there's really been nothing sneaky about it, and it's not 1 or 2 people, because every year we get a few people that complain about it, and it's really finding a balance between the quality of life that John's advocating for, to have less noise on the weekends and on holidays, and the economic viability for all the landscapers who live here, and the needs for people to be able to maintain their property. And some people couldn't maintain their property themselves with a rake if they wanted to, and we have businesses that legitimately depend on being able to sell these products, and so there are a lot of factors to consider. So I think it's fair to say that this has been brought to us on a number of occasions. Absolutely. It's been brought to us by a number of organizations. Every year we hear from a few people. We don't hear from nearly the number of people as they do in some other communities that have larger properties where landscapers come more often. But there are a lot of sides to this, and I too have heard from private people who like to use their own leaf blower to do all sorts of things year-round, as well as people who use landscapers. And I'm thinking of my own yard and using a landscaper. So I realize there are a lot of factors to consider, but this isn't being snuck in, and this isn't something that we're just responding to 1 or 2 people.
Furthermore, again, to reiterate your point, you know, yes, there are businesses, yes, there's a consumer, and yes, there's the people who actually do the actual work, and it's not their business, and it may be their own health and risk, you know, it may be their own health. And this is not the first time we've talked about this, but again, if we're not going to do it now, then when are we going to come back to this? Because it seems like we talked about it a little bit earlier this year, now we're talking about it again. You know, being in this seat, we could easily never talk about this again. And I don't know how much of a commission or a study I want to do about, you know, the effects of this and the effects of that, and you know, and $10,000 here and $10,000 there. If we're not going to discuss it now, if we cannot get 3 people to agree on this issue, then when are we going to come back to it? Because it happens that way.
And Enrique, you've expressed concern about the process and this not being done in a proper process. What would be an appropriate process?
I'm not in support of this. I want to discuss the noise which was brought to our attention, and put this on a schedule to discuss it again about what we want to do, what's entailed. We were supposed to go speak to people at Austin Lawnmower. I don't know if that was done or not, because they have some knowledge about costs and all of that. I'd like to know what the wear and tear on the average machine is, so I'd like to grandfather something like this in, not vote on it, that it goes in immediately. That's it. You know, I'm not going to sit here and do a tit for tat on the words being used and put in my mouth. I don't feel like doing it. I'm not in support of doing it this way. That's it. So I'm voting on a no on this. I get outvoted, I get outvoted. I'm fine.
And just to kind of read back to where we had the last conversation in regards to this, we did say that if we wanted to discuss this, it has to be a public meeting. We have to invite all the landscapers that live around our neighborhoods, that live and work here in the village of Austin, and see what the reactions are and what we're trying to do and affect their business. So if you guys decide to do something like that at some point, you know, we just had a presentation here that I've been sitting in this chair for about 6 years. It took 6 years to get to a building to make it ADA accessible. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So you just have to keep at it, I guess.
Yes, and if we have a meeting where we call a public hearing, then we can work to get
again,
everybody out to
right
have a
now,
conversation.
Right now we have this, and this is what we're going to do. If the rest of the board feels a different way,
that's what I'm trying to get to.
So this is what I'm hearing. We do have consensus that we very much want to move forward without any more obstacles than necessary with updating the noise ordinance to accommodate the request about generators. If we also include a public hearing at that time to make sure that we hear from landscapers, that we hear from the businesses, that we hear from, and we have that conversation, then that will really hold up the noise ordinance related to the generators. So I think, because I know it really sounds like, unless I'm hearing things wrong, we have consensus doing the noise ordinance with everything that has to do with the generators. The next phase will have to be having a conversation about gas-powered leaf blowers. You're concerned that if we don't do it now, we'll never have that conversation, and that is a very legitimate concern because you've been in government long enough now to know that that's how things happen. Do we have an agreement from this board that once this noise ordinance is passed, we then look at phase 2, which would be gas-powered leaf blowers, and get that to a state where we can go for a public hearing, and we can have a public hearing week after week. You know, every legislative session for 2 months, we could have a public hearing on leaf blowers if we wanted to make sure that we've solicited input from all of the interested parties. But I don't think we should hold up the noise ordinance on generators to have that conversation. I'm looking at you because you're the one who's pushing for it.
Yeah, I say where I stand. I mean, it's
You support it. You support it for generators. You just don't think that we're going far enough, and we're wasting an opportunity right now.
absolutely.
John, you've been silent for much of this latest discussion.
Well, as much as I'm not happy about gas leaf blowers and the pollution and the toxins that they push into the air, which I happen to believe there's plenty of science to approve that, I also understand Trustee Levin's concern about, a phase-in, and that there will be an economic cost to businesses. If we all of a sudden draw a line in the sand and say, you can't use this equipment. I don't share your opinion that that it's not significant, because it is. It is significant.
I never said it wasn't significant.
Okay. Well. All right. Well, that's. I misread you then, or misunderstood. So the net is, I don't want to hold back the generator situation, because I think that's an important infrastructure for this particular applicant, and I don't want to put them at risk of being in violation of our noise ordinance because they're trying to do the right thing, for their property. So I would want to get the assurance of the other board members here, at least here at this this meeting, that we are going to revisit this and revisit it soon, and have the necessary public dialogue to educate and talk about how we would do this. So,
Stuart, don't worry about chickens for now, but let's, Jamie, can you make sure that the next work session, after we have moved forward the noise generator ordinance, that we now do phase 2 of the generator ordinance to the noise, that we do our second pass at the noise ordinance, now focusing on leaf blowers. But let's get through our public hearing on generators, and then we move on to this. Okay. Good?
Yep.
All right. You'll have the tape. Play it back to us.
I have a motion to adjourn this work session to executive session for matters regarding the employment of a particular person and for matters involving real property.
So moved.
second.
All in favor? Aye. And with that, we say thank you very much for joining us for this week's work session. Next week, we will be at the police court facility on Spring Street. This meeting is adjourned to executive session.